So I'll rattle through this, explain a bit about me, explain a bit about the project. And as I said, at the end, we'll come back to questions. I'll stop recording before we get into that. So Gigabit Capable Community Network, StrathspeyNow. What does that actually mean? Hang on a minute, that works well. Gigabit Capable Broadband is a phrase that's within the industry at the moment. Most people will have heard of super fast broadband. Super fast as a term has been around since 2010 and is an industry standard that more or less relates to a speed of 30 megabits per second. I'm not a technical person. I'm not going to get into the technicalities, but that 30 megabits per second has been, if you like, the gold standard of super fast broadband for more than a decade. And it's what underpins a lot of the R100 program and is the aspiration for the R100 program to try and ensure everyone has access to super fast as a minimum. Gigabit capable is obviously significantly bigger, better, faster, and if it's gigabit capable, means that if a business required 1,000 megabits per second, then it can deliver it. So it's pretty much chalk and cheese. The reality is that most will fall somewhere between the two, and there's a separate phrase which is ultra fast, which is it's sort of 80 to 100 megabits per second, but it's certainly faster than super fast. But gigabit capable means people can buy in chunk sizes to get the speed that they actually need and want. What does it do? Well, it's, as it says on the screen, it's offering improved connectivity to homes and businesses across Strathspey. That's the aspiration. It's centered on Grantown as a project hub, and I'll come back to why that is, but John and Bill have already touched on that. It's about triggering support vouchers for the most hard to reach premises. So I'm sure a lot of you will be aware that there is funding available with vouchers. There have been different schemes over the last years, some from the UK government, some from the Scottish government, to try and help support people to connect their premises. It's about building a community network that will deliver benefits to multiple audiences. And again, more on that, because that's born out of the work that we've been delivering elsewhere, but anchors back to, again, the chats that we had with John and Bill that now go back to 2017. It's about supporting economic recovery and development. It's about using clean technology and supporting green skills. And it's about creating a sustainable model to do all of those things ongoing. So what does that actually look like? In 2017, Grantown was one of something like 40 towns across Scotland that was in a project called the Digital Towns Programme. And we were appointed, our company was appointed as consultants by the Scottish Government to listen to the requirements of those towns and make some recommendations going forward in terms of what those towns needed as far as digital support was concerned. We spoke with and met with Bill and John, as well as representatives from those towns, and they were from Stornoway in the Isles down to Dumfries in the Borders and lots of places in between. And our recommendations from that were to look at the creation of a new improvement district model, which centered around digital. And the Scottish Government came back to us and said, that's a nice idea. Find us a demonstration town and see how you get on. I'm prayseeing, but that was pretty much the way they said it. So we chose Cooper. As I said, I'm in Fife, and we chose Cooper. 1, I knew the town. 2, it's 6 miles from where I am. 3, they had a very active business association who wanted to try and be the demonstration project, and we knew that we would get seed corn funding for that. So we won seed corn funding to run that demonstration phase, and that launched in 2018, and it went to a ballot of businesses in 2019, and they voted and they created a digital improvement district. And that digital improvement district takes a levy from businesses, the levy payers, and through the work that we do, it supports community partners, culture and tourism providers, education and trading organizations, environmental projects, health and social care partnerships, and also fosters economic development. That's our hub and spoke approach. And that's what we then put back to the Scottish Government and said, from the Digital Towns programme, this has been a success. We've won the ballot. This is now available and open to any of those 40 plus towns across Scotland. For all kinds of reasons, that hasn't happened. And I won't bore you with those now, but there hasn't been the political will to see that programme develop and evolve. So Cooper remains the one and only digital improvement district, not just in Scotland, but in the whole of the United Kingdom. As a part of that process, we were challenged by businesses in Cooper to say, call yourselves a digital improvement district, our broadband's rubbish. Now, broadband was never part of the key issue. The key issue as far as the program was concerned was digital support for the community, which is why we created the hub and spoke model that we did. But we understood that actually when it comes to it, all of us rely on improved connectivity. We've just published, and I can share a link to this, we've just published our first annual report in January that details all the work that's been delivered by Cooper back into the community on that hub and spoke model. And that flags up the serious issue of the lack of connectivity that is holding back the town, the area, residents, home workers, businesses, etc., etc. I'm going to cover off just a couple of slides to show you some of the work that's delivered. So the initial coverage from Cooper was Cooper in its electoral ward. It's evolving from that to look at a much larger area, and this is relevant when we come to talk to Strathspey, because it's not just about a town, it's about how that town supports a much larger rural catchment. In terms of the digital and social media engagement that we're running is through multiple channels, Facebook being one of them. And this shows just a snapshot of that work, looking at the Facebook following and what's being delivered from Cooper and engagement levels. And then you're looking at blog readers. We run a blog for the town, and you can see from the maps on the right-hand side, hundreds, if not thousands of people picking up and reading content and finding out about what's happening in and around Cooper purely through the work that we're doing, all based on the idea of it being a digital hub supporting lots of audiences. But we come back to this issue of connectivity. That isn't your screen, it's mine. And it's the dreaded buffering, waiting for things to load, waiting for things to happen. And increasingly people, whether they were residents or businesses, are saying to us, if you can help us, we really need improved connectivity. We need better access to broadband, and we can't wait any longer for the promises that have been made. So that leads us now to look at the next few years of Cooper. We have a 5-year term delivering what we're delivering, written into Scottish planning legislation to support everything. But we're looking beyond that as to how we can help everybody with their connectivity. So we're now talking about creating a gigabit-capable community network, which I touched on at the beginning, that is, to all intents and purposes, exactly the same as a digital improvement district, but it's looking at how all of that work and support could be delivered, but in a different way and funded in a different way. So you'll see within this, residents are now at 1 o'clock on the clock face, and so it's property owners and homeowners being the driving factor. How through this, by connecting people, the funding of that network could then help deliver all of these community benefits to all of these different groups. So last October, we launched a registration page for Cooper to understand if people were interested in signing up to try and get better broadband. That's a snapshot map. And you can see the answers. Yes, there are lots of pins, and some of those pins represent more than one address, because more than one, they're all postcode rated, and some of those will have 2 or 3 properties. And expanding that out, there's a lot more. On the back of that, and we've kept in touch with Bill and John throughout all of this, we said, well, okay, we could look to do exactly the same thing for Strathspey. So hence we launched StrathspeyNow, and we launched that in October with exactly the same premise of trying to find out the appetite and demand for improved connectivity from home and business owners across Strathspey. And again, you can see lots and lots of pins registering there right the way across the area. I've expanded it out to see where you are. Granton's obviously smack in the middle, but we have people, in fact, there's people off the left-hand edge now. There's off the left-hand side. We've got people down to sort of, well, heading down the A9, but all the way up to Abelard on the top right, and lots of different places in between. And as I said, each of those pins may represent more than one property, but there's certainly clusters that appear. Zooming in on Granton, and we've said that Granton is the hub, not least of all because of the Granton Society working with us all the way back to 2017 to try and get this level of support of what could be done. But you can see there's a significant number of people in the town have registered their interest, and then we have the smaller clusters that are heading out to Durham Bridge and Cromdale and so on and so forth that spread out from that. So this is all off our back. This is all just us having a bit of a suck it and see to test the water to try and find out what the demand is. So R100. Everybody talks about R100. It's the plan from the Scottish government to connect 100% of properties to fibre and to super fast and so on and so forth. Now that isn't going to happen anytime soon. And in fact, in Cooper, only yesterday we were contacted by people who live on the outskirts of Cooper to say, fairly exasperatingly, they've been told by Openreach, we were going to connect you this month. We won't now connect you until 2022. Oh. So the ongoing issues with R100 are ongoing, and that is something that we don't have any control over. But what we're trying to show is that there's a different route to try and connect people that doesn't rely on all the fibre in the ground, because there is fibre in the ground, but it can be pulled out to deliver it differently. And there are there's lots of different games in play between politics and Westminster and Holyrood. Again, we don't want to get involved and embroiled in any of it, but there are, you know, X billion here, X hundreds of million there. All we see at the end of the day is lots of residents and businesses still stuck on dial-up speeds at best, and sometimes with no connectivity whatsoever. So that's driving us to try and do something. Now, and this will test your eyes a little bit. There's lots and lots of little dots on this map. The red ones being main vouchers, and the dark blue ones being what are called interim vouchers. Every single one of those main vouchers means that property is eligible for up to £5,000 of support from Digital Scotland. And every one of those interim vouchers means that that property is eligible to up to £400 of support. The issue is, it's down to each individual property owner to make an application to try and do something about it. And just to connect one property might cost significantly more than £5,000. So that's why we're in a catch-22, because if it's left to individual people to try and connect individual properties, it's a very, very protracted and painful process. What we're trying to argue and look at is, as a collective through StrathspeyNow, if we can encourage more people to register their interest, we can act for and on their behalf to trigger that funding to be able to create a network that can grow by cluster and connect many more people than if we're all going to wait for this process, because this process has been in place for a long time and everybody is where they are and nothing has really improved that much. So there's an awful lot of properties that are struggling. There's an awful lot of properties who, even if they have a good connection, want a better connection, and that's another topic for another discussion. But there's ever increasing exponential demand for this, and what we're trying to do is corral everybody to shine a light on it and say this can be done, but it's very much about the community driving it. We've focused in there on Granton, and I apologize because that's the wrong map, hasn't got the red dots on it, but the numbers are right. There should be 252 red dots on Granton. We'll update the map before we share this, and there's 132 interim vouchers. That's 252 properties in that area eligible for £5,000 a piece. But as I say, if it's left to individuals to make that application, you'll only be told that it's going to cost you possibly less, possibly that amount, or possibly more. and it's then down to you to knock on neighbors' doors and try and do something about it. What we're trying to do is to get around that and make it an easier process. So just as a take stock on that, we've got this far. We've identified the opportunity, and we've identified the numbers. We've also identified that we can deliver what we're talking about. Technically, what we're talking about delivering a gigabit-capable broadband network is technically possible, but it is totally dependent on numbers, and I'm going to go through some of that now. From a technical point of view, and again, I'm not technical. Ultimately, the network is point-to-point wireless delivery. So it pulls fiber out of the ground, and we've established where the fiber is. We can then point-to-point that in large distances, up to 7 kilometers, to then connect in small distances, 500 meters at a time, and that delivers ultra-fast connectivity. So we can deliver what we're talking about. We know that. As far as a network's concerned, and we're looking at the whole, StrathspeyNow neck of the woods now, it depends on clusters. So it's point to point to enable us to build this and bolt on. So it's a little bit Lego-like, if you can imagine these being Lego bricks. We can join them, but by joining cluster to cluster makes it work better and work faster, and more people can then sign up and join into it. Focused again on Granton as the hub, because that's the core of where we have most people signed up. But if we can start the build in Granton, we can then cluster to cluster link and join up the whole of StrathspeyNow. As we do that, it's not just triggering the support of the vouchers to get people who are eligible for those to join. It's opening that network for anybody who wants to sign up, just as a straight commercial entity, to sign up to that network and order their broadband through it. I've focused in here specifically on the town, so you can see there exactly how it would work. This is just a rough scope of it. We've got a much more detailed technical drawing, but it's very cluttered and it doesn't make much sense, so I've simplified it. But point to point, this is exactly how it would work. And once we have enough on a cluster, we can then extend it again and extend it again and extend it again. So hopefully that explains that part of the process. Many hands make light work. So the registration process, I'm hoping all of you will have registered, but if you haven't, there's an online registration process to invite people to register their interest. And it purely is that at the moment. It's a registration of interest to say, we are interested in improved broadband connectivity for either my home or my business address. That populates our map, and it gives us a database to look at the speeds people have got and the costs people are paying and how bad things are. And there, I can tell you, some of them are absolutely woeful. There are people paying through the nose for no connectivity whatsoever, and that's not good. So far, across the whole area, we have 309 registrations. And that is, as I said, just off our own back, going out there, sharing a page, getting some publicity through the Strathi, and enough people sharing it with their friends, colleagues, neighbors, and saying, this seems like a good idea. Do you want to sign up? We are this close to being able to start this process in Granton. And we have a meeting on Monday where that will be discussed and decided. Now, this is purely us on a commercial entity as a company to say, we're going to give this a go. But it's based on the work that we've done with Bill and John, and it's based on the demand that we can see from this registration process, that people saying, yes, we want it. So the opportunity is there to create this as something that's going to be much, much bigger and deliver many more benefits for StrathspeyNow. What happens once we start the ball rolling? Well, all those people who are registered, we package into our clusters. And if you took Granton as an example, we would put all of those properties together as a cluster. We would then liaise with Digital Scotland, and we would give that data to Digital Scotland, who would then write to each of those people to say, do you wish to proceed to trigger the voucher to support you? We hope people will. And if they do, that then is given back to us as a confirmation that we can proceed, and that once we build it, Digital Scotland will release the funding to help us to build that network. It's only at that point that we start the work. The only commitment that is asked for is that to trigger that voucher, the business owner or the homeowner has to commit to sign up to the broadband. If they don't commit to sign up to the broadband, we can't proceed. And when they do sign up, all of the information will be known in terms of service, speeds, cost. So there's no one signing up for anything until all of that is very, very clear and understood. And you will be signing and agreeing to a contract to be able to deliver what we're talking about. So back to the community benefit, because there are companies out there that are, I say just, there are companies out there doing community networks. There have been for many, many years. And they might be for 15 properties, 20 properties, whatever. What we're talking about is substantially different because it anchors back to the work that we're doing in Cooper. We're looking at this as a way to deliver the support that was requested by Granton in the 2017-18 Digital Towns Review that we haven't been able to do. But by doing what we're doing, we believe we will be able to deliver those benefits by creating this new model. So the circle on the left is from Cooper, and it's the Digital Improvement District. The circle on the right is an evolution of that model that we hope to be able to deliver to support businesses, community partners, culture, tourism, et cetera, on the strength of people investing in and creating a gigabit-capable network that will help to fund all of those community benefits and our support work thereafter. So back to the list of the tick boxes. That's what we're talking about, and that's where we're at. We wanted to do this discussion because we just need to get more community buy-in and more community awareness of what we're trying to do. As I said, we're taking a decision on Monday, and I'm 99% certain that decision will be we are going to make that first application and request Digital Scotland support us as soon as to start this process from Granton. But as soon as we do that, we want the snowball to start rolling. We want to start to encourage people right the way across Strathspey to say, this is what we're doing in the core. By cluster, the more people that register, the more quickly we can offer this service and the more quickly we can connect people. That's where I'm at. I'll now stop. I'll stop the share and I'll stop the recording so that we can just take Q&A.